Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. In the first two games of their series against the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks held their opponent to just 107 points and 98 points, respectively. Those are two very solid defensive games. However, in today's Game 3 against Miami, they took it to a whole nother level. This was a dominant defensive performance as the Bucks came away with a 113-84 win in a game where they did not allow the Heat to score 25 points in a single quarter. Miami scored 14 points in the first quarter, 22 in the second quarter, and 24 points in the third and fourth quarters, respectively. This was outstanding defense from the Bucks, and it all started with Brook Lopez's rim protection. When you look at the box score, it will tell you that Brook had 2 blocks, which is a solid but not spectacular number. However, from watching the game, you know that Brook made a much larger impact on the Heat at the rim than that number would indicate, as Lopez did a terrific job of limiting what Miami was able to do inside the paint. That was especially true when it came to the way that he defended the Heat's 2 star players, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. If you've been watching my videos recapping this series thus far, you've probably noticed a bit of a trend. Brook has done a great job of making Bam shoot in the mid-range where he's clearly not as comfortable as he would be finishing around the basket. That trend continued today as right out of the gates, Brook was forcing Bam to take shots in the mid-range time and time again. And Bam started off, I think, 0 for 3 on those mid-range jumpers. So this strategy was clearly working, and considering that Bam has usually been a decent but not great shooter in those mid-range shots, he kept putting them up, and they just were not going in, and it clearly was working to the Bucks' favor. Bam did finish this game with a solid stat line, scoring 17 points on 7 to 14 shooting, but I'd be willing to wager that most of that came against Bobby Portis in the second half, as there was a stretch of ball where the Heat were really targeting Portis in the pick and roll, and that allowed Adebayo to get going both as a scorer and as a passer. So overall, a great job individually by Brook Lopez matching up on Bam one-on-one. In addition to that individual defense, Brook also did a great job as a team defender, as he was particularly able to stymie each and every one of Jimmy Butler's drives to the basket. Butler finished with a solid stat line, scoring 19 points and 7 for 17 shooting, but a lot of those buckets, actually almost all of those buckets, came on jumpers, where Jimmy is not nearly as good as he is when he's able to get to the basket. A very similar story to what I just talked about with Adebayo. Brook cut off Jimmy whenever he tried to get to the rim, and when he was able to get to the paint, Brook was very physical and did a great job of standing straight up to avoid committing a foul on Butler, as Butler has been quite good at getting to the free throw line over the past couple years. Instead, Jimmy was forced to shoot jumpers from the free throw line extended time and time again, and while some of those did go in, they're not nearly as efficient of shots as the layups at the basket would be. In addition to that, Butler did have a bit of an outlier shooting game from the three-point line as he shot 50% from 3, and that's, not where he usually is, as he was a 25% shooter from beyond the arc this regular season. So overall, a really nice game from Brook Lopez in cutting off the paint, and when he does that, it means that the Bucks are usually going to be giving up a lot of jump shots. In the past, that has been a bit of a recipe for disaster. However, in this game, they exhibited defensive dominance, and that extended all the way out to the perimeter, where we saw Jrue Holiday do a great job of defending Goran Dragic, and Chris Middleton do a great job of chasing around Duncan Robinson. Let's start by talking about Holiday. Dragic was inserted into the starting lineup over Kendrick Nunn for this Game 3. That was going to be the big adjustment that coach Erik Spoelstra made. It didn't work. Holiday was able to match his minutes with Dragic for basically the entire game, and that meant that Dragic was never going to be comfortable on the offensive end of the court. Goran finished with just 8 points on 3 for 14 shooting, and he was not able to get easy jump shots off at any point in this game because of the way that Jrue defended him. Jrue is an absolute hound dog, and I look forward to seeing how he's able to defend Kyrie Irving in the Bucks' second round series against presumptively the Brooklyn Nets. Chris Middleton also did a great job of chasing Duncan Robinson around the three-point line, as he did not allow Robinson to make a single three-pointer, which is unheard of if you've watched the Heat over the past few years. Robinson seems to always generate a ton of points from beyond the arc, but in this one, he went 0 for 4 from the three-point line and just 1 for 6 from the field overall. as he finished with 2 points. This means that Middleton has held Robinson to 3 for 12 shooting over the past 2 games, and that is a terrific job by Chris guarding one of the best shooters in the entire NBA. Middleton worked so hard in this game of running around screens and closing out very well on Robinson and preventing him from getting easy shots off. This was a great defensive performance from Chris and Drew and Brook, and those 3 guys are a big reason why the Bucks limited the Heat to just 84 points in this game. Giannis Antetokounmpo's defense individually on Jimmy Butler was fantastic as well, but I just had so many other things to cover that I won't dive much deeper into his defense. I think that 2 stats can really sum up the Bucks' defense in this game quite easily. The Heat shot 37.6% from the field and 28.1% from 3. The Heat usually aren't the best shooting team in the league, but for them to shoot that poorly consistently throughout this series is telling of how great Milwaukee has been on the defensive end of the court. Coach Mike Budenholzer deserves a lot of credit for that as well, as he has consistently pushed all the right buttons for the Bucks as their head coach. The offense wasn't as great as the defense was in this game, but it was still certainly a quite solid unit. The big 3 really showed up for the Bucks in this game. Chris Middleton led the way in scoring as he had 22 points and 8 rebounds while shooting 50% from the field. He hit some incredibly difficult shots in isolation. He did a great job of taking advantage of mismatches against Duncan Robinson and was sure to kill switches whenever he got one of the Heat's big men, whether that was Dwayne Dedmon or Bam Adebayo, on him. Middleton also made some big shots over the Heat's better perimeter defenders in Trevor Ariza and Jimmy Butler, and one in particular that stands out to me came in a big run in the third quarter where he just nailed an incredibly difficult off-the-dribble three-pointer over the outstretched arms of Ariza. So a nice game from Chris, and his ability to hit those difficult shots in isolations makes him a viable weapon against just about any defense and any individual defender in the entire NBA, and I look forward to seeing what kind of work he can do against the Brooklyn Nets in next round series. Obviously, I am getting a little bit ahead of myself talking about Brooklyn versus Miami, but it appears quite likely that those 2 teams will be matching up in the second round. The other 2 members of the Big 3 had double-doubles. Drew Holiday, who was a ridiculous plus 41 in this game, had 19 points and 12 assists, having that double-double in the points and assists categories. He also was very efficient scoring the ball, making 7 of his 10 shots from the field. Drew's passing, on the other hand, was the biggest asset that he brought to the Bucks on the offensive end of the court in this game. He dished out those 12 assists, as I said before, and a lot of those were very key passes that set up some incredibly easy shots for his Bucks teammates. As soon as Bryn Forbes and Bobby Portis were inserted into this game off the bench, Drew did a great job of getting them involved in the offense, as he found Forbes for an open three-pointer, and he ran a pick-and-pop play with Portis, where both of those 2 guys got open shots from beyond the arc on back-to-back possessions, and that led to them getting off to a hot start for the Bucks off the bench. Holiday also did a nice job of finding cutters going to the rim. He found Pat Connaughton once on a curl cut, and on another play, he found Brook Lopez running down the court for an easy lob pass where Brook was able to finish with a nice layup. The best pass of the day for Drew had to have been his cross-court laser to Pat Connaughton for a three-pointer in the fourth quarter. That just exhibited the vision that Drew has for the court, and this series as a whole has really shown that, as Holiday is averaging 10 assists per game through the first 3 games against Miami. Giannis Antetokounmpo's double-double came in a bit of a different fashion than Holiday's did, as Giannis got that in the scoring and rebounding categories respectively. Antetokounmpo struggled a little bit in the first half, but he was able to get to the line in the second half, and that allowed him to get going, and he finished the game shooting 6 for 12 from the field and 5 for 7 from the free throw line. I also found it quite interesting that Antetokounmpo made 80%, 4 out of 5 of his free throws after the Miami Heat fans started counting down every time he got to the free throw line. Just a little bit of an interesting niche there, and it was good to see Giannis do well from the line despite those belligerent fans. Giannis also did a nice job of making 2 turnaround jumpers in the post. Heading into this game, Giannis was shooting just 1 for 17 on jump shots in this series, as Bucks color announcer Marquez Johnson was quite frequently pointing out throughout this game. And for that reason, it was great to see Giannis look really comfortable in the post as he knocked down those 2 turnaround jumpers. There was one negative from this game, however, and that was the injury suffered by Bucks starting shooting guard Donte DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo suffered a foot contusion in the first quarter and would not return to this game for the remainder of the game. It appears up in the air as to whether or not DiVincenzo will appear in Game 2. I'm not going to dive too far into this because, spoiler alert, my video planned for tomorrow will be talking about the DiVincenzo injury. But overall, I'm hopeful that Donte will be back soon, and I don't think that you can let that one small negative take away from what was a huge win for the Bucks. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this victory in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.